Despite starting just 7 games out of 12 this season, Jacoby Brissett already has more overall fantasy points than Tua Tagovailoa and Cam Ward this season. Cardinals quarterback has scored at least 20 points in each game this season, despite playing for a 3-9 Arizona team. And it just so happens that he is Jamey Eisenberg's start of the week. And we have Jamey and Dave and Heath, the fellas from FFT. They're all here today. Jacoby Brissett. He is the choice. Jamey, why?
Because I'm crazy.
Are you?
I mean, look, Jacoby Brissett's got one of the toughest matchups on the table with the Los Angeles Rams. They've been very good against opposing quarterbacks, except on the road. When you look at what these road numbers have been for quarterbacks, at least when the Rams are on the road, when these quarterbacks are at home, 4 of 6 quarterbacks, 19.6 fantasy points or more. The last 2, the great Mac Jones and the fantastic Bryce Young, each scored at least 29 fantasy points against the Rams. So I don't know if this Rams defense is actually as good as advertised. Now, you'd love to see Brissett have a healthy Marvin Harrison Jr., but that really hasn't mattered. We've already seen him take on some tough opponents already this season. The Colts, the Packers. He's done very well in some really opponents that are on par with what the Rams bring to the table. And the volume is the key here. He's going to be over 40 pass attempts. He's been that almost in the entirety of the times that he started for Kyler Murray. So I think it's going to be an awesome game once again for Brissett. This is a very bad week for quarterbacks. We're talking about, as Dave's going to tell you, sitting guys like Lamar Jackson. But I think Brissett has an opportunity to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. So Sportsline, I wish they were on board with this, but as you see, we all like him as a number 1 quarterback for this week. I think he's going to have one of his better games in that 24-plus range. So excited about Jacoby Brissett once again.
Picked him up in one of our leagues because I have Jackson Dart and Drake May, Carolina, New England, Giants, and San Francisco all on bye. So we're going to go starts around the horn and come back the other way. Starts
jacket
for you.
Jacket.
Jacket to jacket.
Yeah.
We'll go that way. So I'm starting Brissett.
You've heard of Maroon 5. This is the Maroon 2.
It is. It's a fantastic jacket that we're bookending here on the set. Jamey, what else do we have in terms of what's at stake this week?
It's a good week for Michael Wilson as well. You know, so when you like Jacoby Brissett, you got to like Wilson also. And again, no Marvin Harrison, so we're expecting Wilson to get back onto the track that he was on in those 2 games where Harrison missed with the appendix situation. So 33 targets in those games, 25 catches. He was just an absolute rock star, and I think that continues against the Rams because Wilson just goes back to being the go-to guy for Brissett along with Trey McBride. Now, if Harrison does play, you avoid Michael Wilson. We saw that last week. 7 targets did not play well for the Cardinals, but I think Mike Wilson has an opportunity to keep performing at a high level. So excited just about this Cardinal situation and continuing that. And I know Dave is also excited about Greg Dortch, so it's going to be fun to see how these Cardinals wide receivers operate.
Just keep it rolling with the Redbirds. 2 games without Marvin Harrison Jr. Dortch had at least 16 PPR points in each. Touchdowns were a factor. Volume was also a huge factor. Jamey talked about it. Jacoby Brissett having to throw a lot. Losing Marvin Harrison means putting Greg Dortch in the lineup. Obviously, if Harrison plays, Greg Dortch has to be out of the lineup. He's a super high-end flex, and this Rams pass defense tends to play a lot of zone. That means he can catch those underneath passes. So that's one receiver I like. And the other one is Alec Pierce with the Indianapolis Colts. We saw, it's easy to say that, right? Because last week, he was basically their offense. Now he's taking on Jacksonville. The Titans wide receivers stunk against Jacksonville because the Titans wide receivers stink against anybody. But before that game, 2 wide receivers from Arizona, 2 wide receivers from Houston put up 15-plus PPR points against this Jacksonville defense. I think that's the way you beat Jacksonville, is put the ball in the air. Daniel Jones is getting the ball out fast. I think Pierce is going to be his top target. And if he could win on downfield throws against Houston last week, then you know Alec Pierce is going to put up some numbers against Jacksonville this week.
Heath, what do you got?
I like Alec Pierce as quarterback, and I haven't always been the biggest Daniel Jones fan. He's pretty much proven himself this year, at least in this system. The concern we had last week was the leg injury, and it's still a concern. It's a fractured leg. It's probably going to be a concern in the real playoffs. But I do think against this Jacksonville defense, with the pass catchers he has, he can do enough as a passer to be a top 12 quarterback, especially in a week where we have so many guys that we just don't want to start. Other guy at quarterback I really do want to start, Jordan Love. I think his low pass volume has caused some people to sleep on how good he's been as a quarterback so far this year. 19 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, career highs as a starter in basically all efficiency metrics. Jordan Love's playing great football. It's just how many times will they let him throw? Last week, they played the Lions, competitive game. They had to let him throw it 3 times, 30 times. He threw 4 touchdowns. I think it's a competitive game against the Bears as well. They're getting some linebackers healthy. That run defense will be a little better. Love's a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, I made that mistake. I benched Love playing Dave one week, and he benefited from having Love on the bench. So there you go in terms of starts.
So you're saying the
all
only
way.
reason that he won was because you made a mistake?
That's what I thought going into Sunday, but he ended up
That's usually how it works for me in
It ended up
fantasy.
boat racing me, so it didn't really matter. Sits. Let's go around the horn. Start.
I'm just going to stay at the quarterback position, and it's two guys that I would sit for Jordan Love and Daniel Jones, even though they've been a lot better at times this year. Justin Herbert, he's got the screws, the bolts, all kinds of things in his hand. He says he's still going to play. I think a lot of fantasy managers that have him are probably kind of agonizing because it's that Monday night game. Am I going to be able to know if he's playing or not? Don't worry about it. Just don't start him. Just to find somebody else to stream over him. You don't want to
Like
wait.
who? Can you give me a name or two that you'd rather have?
I would much rather start Jacoby Brissett. I would rather, I guess.
Tyrod Taylor.
Tyrod Taylor is not somebody that I would start over Justin Herbert, but he's in that range. He's not a top 15 quarterback for me. Caleb Williams is even behind him. Williams has the highest off-target rate as a passer in the NFL this season. Now he's facing the Packers defense. That's a terrible matchup. Sit Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I'm nervous about Caleb Williams, but I'm more nervous about Lamar Jackson. Jamie knew I was going to talk about this. When is enough for Lamar Jackson, who scored 7 or fewer fantasy points in 3 straight games? And you could say, Dave, we saw him have 2 touchdowns taken away last week. Well, number 1, that was against the Bengals. And number 2, if we did that for every quarterback, then every quarterback would have some good numbers pretty much every single week. The Steelers' backs are against the wall. They have a great track record of limiting him as a passer. He's not the same guy. I am very nervous to start Lamar Jackson this week. I don't want to do it. I would rather start Caleb Williams, and I'm nervous about Caleb Williams, and I'm at 12. I'm nervous about a lot of quarterbacks this week, and if I don't like Lamar Jackson, I'm not going to like Zay Flowers either. You have to go back to week 8 to find the last time Flowers had more than 12.1 PPR points. You want to flex him? That's fine, but if Lamar's struggling, Flowers will too. He's been between 11.9 and 15.3 PPR points in each of his past 3 against Pittsburgh, so not a crazy high ceiling, not a top 24 wide receiver.
All right, Jamie, what are we thinking here?
I got a couple receivers that I'm nervous about as well. You know, you look at Deebo Samuel and you got Rome Odunze, and 2 guys that, you know, certainly in Odunze's case, he's been starting the majority of the season. Samuel's been up and down. But in Samuel's case, you got Terry McLaurin back, and we saw a respectable game for Deebo last week, 11.1 PPR points. That's his best game in the last 3 since McLaurin has been on the field. And you look at this Minnesota defense, they are amazing. Number 2 in fewest fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. The last 3 teams that they faced, Chicago, Green Bay, and Seattle, no receiver has scored a touchdown, no receiver with double digits in PPR points. Keep in mind, the best receiver in fantasy was in that stretch in Jackson Smith and Najigba. So they just take away opposing wide receivers. Some of it is because of game flow, and it can be obviously the case here as well. But I just think Deebo Samuel, at best, a low-end starter in 3 receiver leagues. And for Odunze, he's just been struggling. 8.3 PPR points or less in 4 of his last 5 games, 3 in a row. Targets have been there for him, 6 or more targets in that entire stretch. But as we've seen from the Bears, they've become a run-heavy team. And I think when you look at this matchup, it's not going to be easy for him taking on the Packers. I think the Bears' identity is what it is at this point. That's why we don't like Caleb Williams. We're going to see a lot of DeAndre Swift, a lot of Kyle Monangai. And if you look at Rome Odunze, if this was a normal week, he'd probably be in the lower 30s. But based on just how this player has gone for the majority of the season, a pretty much must-start guy in 2 receiver leagues, I don't even know if I want to start him in 3 receiver leagues at this point, which based on the lack of production. So Odunze is somebody I would try to get away from, certainly in 2 receiver leagues.
So we have a little over a minute. Can I throw in a bonus starter sit potentially here?
Sure.
Justin Jefferson. Fantasy managers has been disappointed. Now, J.J. McCarthy could be back. Dave, what are we thinking about Justin Jefferson?
On Sunday, I was ready to drop him from my fantasy teams, but there aren't 24 wide receivers I'd rather start than Justin Jefferson at this point. I don't know if you just made a face there or not, reacting to me.
No.
But you got to view him as a low-end number 2 fantasy wide receiver. Having J.J. McCarthy is better than having Max Brosmer, and this pass rush for Washington shouldn't affect McCarthy that much. He could get in that neighborhood of 12 PPR points is what I'm looking at for Zay Flowers, maybe a little bit better than that.
Heath?
Yeah. You don't want to call Justin Jefferson a must-start wide receiver, but the shape of the wide receiver position in fantasy football, you're not going to find. Like, maybe you have 2 elite wide receivers. Somehow you have George Pickens and Rashee Rice on your team, and now Marvin Harrison's out, so you can start Michael Wilson. That's like the one scenario where you might be able to get away from Justin Jefferson. He's a top 20 wide receiver. And I do think it's better to have J.J. McCarthy back. It is a terrible defense. There's like a 10% chance that we just get a classic Justin Jefferson game. That's the same way that I feel about Lamar Jackson, and I just feel really silly benching that.
Washington's number 5 in most fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. This is the spot. This is the spot. So if McCarthy is right, it's all McCarthy. Okay. It's nothing to do with Justin Jefferson. He's still getting open. He's still getting 6+ targets on a week-to-week basis. We know at one point it was 9+ targets. But I do think that you hope that Minnesota scores. You hope that I'm sorry, you hope Washington scores. You hope Minnesota's forced to throw, and then we get a little bit of uptick in volume for him. I still think you got to start Justin Jefferson. You just really have to not expect him to be a league winner.
Okay. Thanks for humoring me, guys. Guys from FFT, Heath, Dave, and Jamey. There's a tweet, by the way. Our producer said you should have started Jacoby Brissett last week. He's got receipts, Jamey.
He was right, except the guy who I did use as a start of the week was better in R.J. Harvey. So I took Jack's advice, and I went with Brissett this week.
That's why he's the two-time Fantasy Analyst of the Year. FFT, there you go. Scan the QR code. Great advice from the fellows, including Adam Azer as well. And best of luck to all our players here at Week 14.